Get ready.
Wouldn't it be better if everyone just died? This is a question that has passed through my brain many times before. Usually when being frustrated or sad and not knowing how to handle that, especially in my youth. It's hard not to blame the cruel world for your problems and not want everything to just burn away and die. Well, for me, this was usually nothing more than a fleeting and very emotional thought. Hideaki Anno and the good guys at Gainax actually attempt to follow the true emotions underlying this raw emotion and ask the question, what if everyone just died? Neon Genesis Evangelion is a controversial series. I always find it interesting how much people know it, yet don't know it at all. The first complaint is always how complicated and convoluted it is, which honestly, I don't really think it's that hard to understand, especially when characters are constantly stating everything. It's not that subtle, people. I blame the fact that a lot of people were exposed to this anime at a young age and kind of just ran with it. But I promise you, if you pay attention, it's really not that complicated than most art films or any Hideo Kojima game. While a lot of the conversation is about how it's a deconstruction of the mecha anime genre, which to some extent is true, to say it's only that is quite literally only scratching the surface. It's not like it's the first example of a mecha show being more realistic or even satirizing older tropes found in those anime. Zambot 3 is 20 something years earlier and did just that. And Mobile Suit Gundam, the original, helped to create the real robot subgenre, which the name should tell you all you need to know. Hell, I'd even argue that the original 1979 Gundam show is a much better example of a deconstruction of a classic super robot anime than Evangelion ever was. It's not like Anno hasn't admitted to being inspired by works like Devilman, Mobile Suit Victory Gundam, and Space Runaway Ideon. I think a lot of people don't know this because anime history, for most people, seems to be a void on anything before 1995, but even that might be giving too much credit. While, yes, there are elements of deconstruction found in Evangelion that cannot be denied, it's also not really about that. Instead, being more about existential thought and using characters of a robot anime where characters must be forced to stop an alien invasion to do so. It's more than just putting relatable characters in absurd situations, it's also exploring who these people are and how they became this way. The danger is just a lens to study the characters. Unlike a show like Gundam, per se, it's not so much about how conflict changes people, but how messed up they are already. It's an exploration on humanity and the barriers, or AT fields, we create ourselves to shut others out, while also begging them to come in and understand. End of Evangelion, in turn, asks the question, what if these barriers didn't exist? The entire crux of what the Shadow organization in the series and movie is trying to do, Sele, is just that. Under the name human instrumentality, creating a heaven on earth, so to speak, where humans won't have to live in the terrible world they destroyed by playing with forces they could never possibly hope to understand. A plan which Shinji is not totally opposed to at first, as it may have been painful at first, but once he realizes this, he willingly goes with it. Ava, however, says that this isn't correct, and you can't go back and you can't undo what has been done. You can't simply detach yourself, whether that be in drugs, suicide, or even something like art. You can't not exist in the world with other people, no matter how much that may hurt. The absurdist philosopher Camus once said in his seminal work, The Myth of Sisyphus, one must imagine Sisyphus happy, referring to the ancient myth where a man is forced to roll a boulder up a hill for all of eternity. This is essentially the message of the film and series as a whole, that no matter how painful the world may be, it's still the world you live in. And while indulging in art or anything else is okay, that's not reality, it's a facade. As the film states, the dream ends where reality begins. Even if it's raining outside, you can find something else to do. As long as the sun and the moon are in the sky, everything will be alright. This is why I find so much solace in the fact that Shinji does not end this movie smiling or saying he got over his depression, because that isn't something that someone can just get over. It's something that you just have to learn to live with and control. He's not happy, but has the hope to be happy. And that has always spoke volumes to me. Humans may never truly be able to understand each other, and maybe we'll never even understand ourselves. But as long as there is a hope, then maybe that's enough. A lot of people don't seem to understand this movie at all. I suppose the first time it can be a bit of a head scratcher, especially in a movie that has its credits in the middle of the movie to signify the end of the fantasy and stepping into reality or the message of the film. It's always funny to see people walking out of the theater and thinking it's over. I always see the horrible thing that Shinji does in the beginning of the film to a comatose Asuka critiqued to no end, or even the reason why she says what she says to him at the end of the film, which I've always found so insufferable. For the first point, I'd just say that they didn't want us to make him likable. This is Shinji at his lowest, wanting any sort of human connection, consensual or not, which is terrible and is disgusting, but it's used to illustrate just how far he's fallen. As for the other, and honestly even dumber point, firstly, when instrumentality happens and everyone's souls are connected, Asuka says she knows what he did, and in a really messed up way, even sort of liked it. I remind you, this is a show about messed up people and imperfect human beings. Asuka, after all, craves attention and affection in a much similar way to Shinji, but instead of moping and being generally pathetic, she hides her angst with pride and a need to be praised, almost to a level of worship. As for her final lines, if you're watching the sub, the only way to watch it, she says, Kimochi warui, which is a hard phrase to translate, but essentially means, how disgusting. She says this after caressing Shinji after he chokes her to see if she's even alive, as he cries when he realizes she is. This is clearly her disgust at understanding Shinji and even feeling sorry for him. The phrase also is something that is typically said in Japanese culture by pregnant women. So I think the implication is also that Asuka sort of pities him how a mother would a child, which shows some serious character development for someone who acted like a spoiled child the entire series. She's disgusted in herself. The other big criticism is Misato, as everyone loves to call her a pedophile. I hate to be the media literacy guy, but holy shit, I have never found a more apt use of the phrase. Misato is someone who's basically looking for her father's love ever since it was taken from her when she left Antarctica with nothing but a scar and the world's best penguin. She could never find solace in others unless she's used the one thing she did have, which was her sex appeal. While not always the case, a majority of how she related to anyone was through that sex, or the appeal. She tries hard to be what Shinji doesn't have, a mother. We see this time and time again throughout the series and over again. It just doesn't work. In the end, she never could replace his mom. While Nerve is being destroyed by the Japanese Defense Force, she uses the only thing she feels she has left to motivate Shinji into doing something, anything. That is a kiss and the promise of something more after, which, of course, is after yelling at him and trying to talk some sense into the world's most depressed 14-year-old. She is simply doing the only thing she thinks she can to get the kid moving. I think it's also worth pointing out that she's literally, when she's bleeding out and knows she's going to die, that she even does this. So, again, people just not paying attention for awesome, funny jokes. I also like how Masato's cross is used as sort of a representation for responsibility and remind Shinji while in instrumentality of that, and that there is some good in the world. I feel as if Gendo and Rei also get a bit of bad rep in this movie, and people just don't really understand what's going on there. Let's start with Rei Ayanami, or maybe I should say Rei 3, the clone of Ikari, Shinji's mother and Gendo's wife, whose soul rests inside of Evangelion Unit 1. More on that last part later. Rei has been essentially a puppet throughout the series, working to further Gendo's goals so that he may be reunited with his wife and be the controller of instrumentality. However, she can see the strings and is constantly having inner turmoil on exactly what she is and if she even matters. In a final act of defiance, she instead betrays Gendo and lets Shinji decide what to make of humanity. Gendo, on the other hand, is a man who hates himself deeply. He projects this hatred onto his son, who is actively cruel and dismissive of, and I can only imagine it's because he sees so much of himself in him. Gendo loses himself in his work, helping to create Evangelions and control instrumentality so he can recapture a wife who is millions of light years away from him. The past cannot be undone. He'll even use people like Ritsuko Akagi, who is also a lonely person begging to be admired, to further this goal. Even in the end, unlike Shinji, he can't find that hope that things can be better, as he believes he doesn't even deserve to be loved, and is beheaded by the beast of his own creation. He is probably one of my favorite written characters of all time. I especially like how Fuyutsuki knows this, but will willingly follow him into the gates of hell, if only to relive those happy days for even just a moment. There is also a talk about religious imagery in this series slash film, and honestly, it's all hogwash. The cast and crew admitted to not really knowing about Christianity, and the series designer said they wanted it because it looked cool. Ano himself has even said that the name was named that way so it could resemble Space Runaway Ideon, having the three-part naming scheme. The crucifixes in the explosions are also all references to Return of Ultraman, which is one of Ano's favorite things ever. There's also just a bunch of Ultraman references all over the series. Sorry, but these religious collections are all made by people who did grow up with those things and want them to be there when they simply aren't and are just aesthetic or mean something completely different. I could talk more about the characters and themes, about how Asuka realizes her mother was always watching her and giving her that love she desired, even if she didn't know, or the dark implications, like how the fact that all the pilots have to be children because the Avos are imbued with their mother's souls, which not only explains the fetus-like cockpit, but also the school, which is nothing but a nest of potential Evangelion pilots. But I think the series and subsequent film speak for itself and should be viewed by anyone and everyone. Narrative and philosophical interpretation aside, this is still one hell of a film. I'm glad I actually got to see it in a theater. It helped me catch just how good the sound design is. You feel every little mechanism on these things, and every movement just makes them feel gargantuan. Huge moment is Asuka's battle against the Sele-created mass-produced Evangelions, which goes from some of the most triumphant mecha battles you've ever seen to one of the most horrific. People who say the ending in the manga is better should be flogged in public. The animation and mixture of 2D and CGI is so perfect. I can only imagine that this was due to the help of Studio IG team, who is known for this, and this was when they were at their top of their game. Much like the series, the editing is a huge draw for me, which is greatly inspired off the underrated series The Thunderbirds. I just love the frantic, fast-paced nature of it, and how it can perfectly describe how a panic attack and nervous breakdown feel. All helped by the delightfully wretched screams of the cast, who are all spectacular. Megumi Ogata must have given out her lungs recording this. I don't even want to think about what happened to Yuko Miyamura's vocal cords after this. If you liked dubbed anime for some godforsaken reason, I'd advise highly against watching this dubbed. I can't speak for the newer dub, which I haven't seen and don't really have any interest in seeing, but the original ADV dub has some questionable line changes and awful added sound effects like that jam sound. Ugh. But Tiffany Grant is not a terrible Asuka and really gives it her all, so give her that. Shiro Sagasu provides the score to this film, which is nothing but spectacular and ethereal. I really love Kom Susurtad, just like everyone else, as well as Thanatos, but Hikasu no Kakadai and Taiku Ino Kinkiyukiran speak to me on another level. I really like the level of violence in this compared to the series, as it feels like something straight up Devilman or Violence Jack, going to guy levels of sheer insanity that I don't know if we'll ever get from anime again on this big of a budget. There are some crazy artistic choices made here too, like illustrating reality by using live action footage, and even showing the people who saw the movie first in the movie. Shout out to that one guy who flips off the camera. If I saw this in the theater at the time, I'd be like the people who saw the Train movie in the theaters in the early 20th century and shit my pants. To me, this movie represents a send off of an era of Gainax, which produced my favorite anime of all time, like Nadia, Secret of the Blue Water, Gunbuster, Otaku no Video, The Daikon Shorts, Royal Space Force, Ono no Tenkusai, and, of course, Evangelion. While they continued to make great and even masterful works for a while longer, it never felt quite like this again. The end of Evangelion is, at the end of the day, a love letter to its fans. This may feel odd to some. I always see the takeaway online that Ano hates otaku culture and nerds and wants you to just go outside already and touch that grass. I don't think the guy that gets up at the crack of dawn every Sunday to watch the new episode of the current season of Super Sentai hates nerd culture at all, just a hunch. It's kind of silly to even suggest that, really. I think End of Evangelion comes from a place within. It's a piece made just as much for Ano as it is for you, the audience. It understands who you are and what you are, but knows that you're also more than that. And you can't let that be all that defines you. For me, this is a film I go back to periodically, as well as the series. It always elicits an extreme emotional reaction whenever I see it, no matter how many times I've watched it and analyzed the film. I tend to go back here whenever all else feels lost. It's a movie that helps me understand that my problems are just that, my problems. And they can be solved, and I can be happy again, or at least have the hope to be. Hey guys, hope you liked the video. This was a big labor of love for me. Definitely my most personal video so far, just because End of Evangelion and just the Evangelion series in general is just something I really hold close. I watched it at probably way too young of an age, so it's always kind of been in my brain. I'm a big fan. I've always wanted to talk about it. There's definitely going to be more Evangelion videos in the future. I maybe we'll do something on the series. I definitely want to talk about some of the weird spin-offs or maybe some of my grievances with the manga, which isn't all bad. I really don't care for a lot of the stuff at the end. Um, but yeah, I'm a pretty big Ava fan, and I really enjoyed writing this. And I hope you guys take something from it. And if you disagree with me or have a, just a personal, like, different take on Evangelion, I'd love to hear it. I think it's pretty open to interpretation. Mine's not the end all be all. Um, but yeah, I hope you liked it, and hope you come back for more. Definitely going to talk about more mecha anime, and definitely not the last time you'll hear Evangelion here in the channel. Always just want to thank my editor Barl for always doing a great job, and hope you're doing better, or at least trying to. See you guys around.